Welcome back to the 1090 podcast. Today's episode is sponsored by Ryan Garner's song, and it's called Dreamin'. And Ryan doesn't like this or really know about this, but I got in cahoots with his wife, Denise, and we're making it happen. We're putting the whole song in our intro today. It's a tasty jam. We hope you have a great day today. Here it is. Ryan Garner, Dreamin'.
Looks blurry. Does anybody else feel like they're dreaming? Is anybody else walking in a haze? Does anybody else feel like they're dreaming? Does anybody know how to win this game? Looking at the man in the mirror now, hoping for something to change. Maybe you need a new suit on, a smile and my ties to blame. I've been tired and angry for too long. I've been foolish thinking there was a truth bomb. Don't want your template anyhow, 'cause I feel right when I'm doing wrong. Anybody else feel like they're dreaming? Is anybody else walking in a haze? Does anybody else feel like they're dreaming? Does anybody know how to win this game? I've been tired and angry for too long. I've been foolish thinking there was a truth bomb. Does anybody else feel like they're dreaming? Is anybody else walking in a haze? Does anybody else feel like they're dreaming? Does anybody know how to win this game?
Welcome back to the 1090 podcast. I'm Sam Josie here with our co-host Mason Sawyer, and today we've got a fun one.
We got Matt Quackenbush in the house, dude.
Boom.
AKA my therapist.
Oh.
So if
Dude, people are always weird. Like, your therapist seems like a normal, cool guy. I'm like, yeah, like they're people too, man.
If you jumped in late to our podcast and didn't listen to the first episodes, give them a rundown on your relationship with Matt if they didn't listen to episode 4.
Yeah, so Matt, big difference in my life because and I talk about our first therapy session a lot when we do our public speaking. And I don't know how much you remember it, Matt, but you basically told me hey, I get it, dude. Your situation is shitty. But hey, you can either kill yourself. Do you remember telling me that? You're like, hey, Macy, I wouldn't blame you if you killed yourself. I'm like, bro, are you allowed to say that to me?
I don't know. I do whatever the hell I want.
Yeah.
Did it work?
It did work. But then you immediately followed up with dude, this is actually an opportunity. And I hated when you used that word opportunity at the time. But you're like, hey, you could use, this is an opportunity. and you can help so many people. And you kind of, and then you talked about the we is greater than me. And it's weird, man, because I already knew that. Like, that wasn't.
Yeah. It's not revolutionary.
Right.
Idea.
Right.
Yeah, not at
it's
all.
just like, it was kind of like a reminder and like a deeper meaning, like a deeper understanding of it. But to open up this podcast with you, I want to talk about what you did a really good job of, Matt, was developing trust with me. And listen, you were like the 7th, 8th therapist I went and saw. So, but the thing that really helped me, Matt, was you talked about your shit.
Yeah.
I didn't even ask. You just started telling me, and you cried.
Yeah.
You started getting emotional about you, and we don't have to talk about it if you don't want to. But
I'll talk about it. I'll
you
cry
told
right
me
now.
you basically you basically told me like the shit you've been through. I'm like, damn. And then it wasn't so much what you said. I mean, it was, but like you just developed trust. You opened up. And I think that showed, I think that's what I'm doing when we do, like when me and Sam do the public speaking and the podcast is like, I think that's everyone's favorite part is honest. Like we're just.
Vulnerable.
Yeah, it's vulnerable.
Yeah, and I think, vulnerability gets a bad rap, right? Like most people think vulnerability and they think like weakness or something like that. But the reality is vulnerability and courage are married. I mean, they're the same freaking thing. If you really want to like split hairs here, like there's no difference between the two. In order to be courageous, you have to be vulnerable. In order to be vulnerable, you have to be courageous. And what you guys do on this podcast is you guys model that for people. And in a world where, things are growing and changing and evolving, but in a world where men being viewed as vulnerable is a bad thing, I think it takes a really courageous, brave couple of guys or whatever to change that, because we have to, quite frankly. I mean, emotions are not something to be afraid of. They're not something to be manipulated or used to hurt other people, which they can be, right? Emotions aren't something that are going to cripple you, but if you can understand what emotions really are and how they work and why they exist, and that they're the most essential part to human existence, all of a sudden emotions become this really important kind of context builder for your life. And so when you're having this tragic, difficult, awful thing happen, and you feel the weight of that tragic, difficult, awful thing, and it's scary and it's hurtful and you're sad and you're grieving, like that's not something to hide. And in fact, what we know, right? Because you look at like research around this kind of stuff. How do you grieve? How do you overcome depression, sadness? The worst thing you can do is resist the emotional stuff that's showing up for you.
And one thing I'm learning, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but one thing to like accept those emotions and maybe use them in a uplifting, positive way instead of letting them cripple you is to talk about it.
Yeah.
Is you have to talk about them.
Yeah. That's the vulnerability thing.
And Matt, this is something I'm learning. Yeah. Like, okay, think about communication in anything. Like communication in basketball.
Right.
Work, marriage, whatever it is.
Parenting.
you talk to anyone in their field of expertise, whatever. Yeah. Like, hey, list me some things you need to do to be successful. I bet communication's up there.
List.
And then, like, for some reason, Matt, when it gets to trauma, no communication all of a sudden. We don't talk about it.
It's because there's a foundational skill set beneath communication that is emotion regulation that people don't have. Right? Does that make sense? Kind of, sort of? Or do you want me to elaborate?
Well, you're going to need to elaborate.
Okay.
But hold on, though.
Yeah.
Because you're smarter than me. So let me just finish this thought, and then I'll let you talk.
Go ahead.
But I think, okay, funeral happens, you talk about it, and then it's like you never talk about it ever again. Like, that's kind of the culture. And maybe I'm wrong, but Okay,
feels like that.
but communication's just like communication's like food and water. Or sorry, talking about your pain is like food and water. Like you need food and water every day. You need to talk about your pain, not just one time, once a month through therapy or whatever. Like you have to continually talk about it, or else it's going to grow and eat you alive on the inside. So you have to keep talking about it. That's one thing I've learned, and I can feel it. I can physically feel my body when I haven't talked about it in a while. It's not good, dude. Like it starts to grow. And one last thing, and then you can jump back in. I think another reason that prevents people from communicating and talking about their pain is they do the comparison thing. And a quote that I loved, I was on the Dead Talks podcast with David, and we kind of stumbled upon this quote together. But the quote was, the thief of grief is comparison. And I think so many people, oh, I'm going through a divorce. Oh, I lost my job. Oh, but it's not as bad as Mason Sawyer's story, so I'm not going to talk about it.
Right.
No, it's not good.
No, not at all. Yeah, and what I essentially kind of the thing you're hitting on, at least how I see it, is what we're trying to do as human beings is connect with one another. I mean, the way that we feel the safest, the way that we feel emotionally the most grounded is when we're connected. And disconnection is almost kind of like in the world. So I do a lot of substance abuse treatment, and in the world of substance abuse treatment and even trauma, right? The enemy is always isolation. And so what's the opposite of isolation? It's connection. And so we need to find a way to connect better with each other. And the way that we do that, primarily because this is how we are designed. I mean, this is what makes us humans. What makes us different from the monkeys is the fact that we can say, hey, I'm feeling this thing. You maybe are feeling this thing too. And then the other person looks back and goes, yes, me too. And you go, I'm not alone.
Dude, that is me, dude.
I'm not
That's
alone.
been me.
That's all it is.
And I think that's been Sam too, as we've been doing this thing.
Because if you don't say that, you believe that you are alone, and believing that I am alone is equivalent to death. And I might as well just, go out to the wilderness and terminate things, whatever, like.
I also think it's connected with being the victim too. Like when you start telling yourself no one understands me, no one gets me, you're isolating yourself, I think. Yeah. And you're giving yourself like this perspective of, because no one gets me, I can kind of do whatever I want and should get away with it, because you just don't know what it's like to be me. You just don't get it. And it's like, dude, what a sad way to live your life.
Yeah, it's sad. It is. It's really sad and painful.
How often do we, like, passing people at the store that or that people at work, I'll walk by like, hey, how's it going? Good. All right, good. Am I just like, how many times do we just ask that, like, out of just habit? We're not
Courtesy,
really
right?
asking
Yeah,
them.
it's just whatever.
And then, like, when they go away, I'll think in my head, like, oh, I'm glad they said good, because I am not ready to talk.
I don't need any conversations.
But, like, what if every time you said that and someone said, like, I'm not well, it's like, oh, crap.
I don't have time for this, actually. Sorry. I got
But, like, that's essentially what everyone should, like, I mean, you can be good, but, like, you're never just good. That's never just the answer. And, like, just passing, it's just a courtesy.
Well, and that's this, I always say that I have this incredible privilege because my job is literally just talking to people in a formalized setting, and I make money doing it. Hooray. Right? Like, so I got to learn a lot for work about humans and behavior, and then I read a ton. But the thing that I think you're talking about, Sam, is like, we human beings are desperate for connection, and we don't know how to connect. And so we just kind of give these one word answers because we're terrified of, more than anything, disconnection and being rejected. And I think if I'm too vulnerable and I share too much, then this person's going to leave or reject me or abandon me, which is like the ultimate trauma thing. I mean, we can talk about that when we get into hero's journey stuff. I know we want to talk about that eventually, but this idea of abandonment is huge, because really the original trauma that every human being experienced, every human being, all of you listeners, myself included, everybody in this room, at one moment in time, I needed mommy and daddy to do something for me. I needed it because that's what was going to keep me safe. But they didn't. Not that they couldn't or they wouldn't. It's just they didn't. Circumstances don't really matter what that looks like. But I was abandoned in that moment. And in that moment of abandonment, I really discovered my true potential for growth, for greatness, for strength. And that's the hardest reality that human beings are constantly wrestling with, is that like we have to stop being so terrified of being abandoned and being rejected and take that risk. That's what vulnerability is. It's the risk and uncertainty of emotionally exposing oneself and at the risk of being rejected and being accepted in return. Like there's no greater emotional context. There's no greater feeling than saying vulnerable thing. And then the other person looks back and goes, hey, me too. And you're like, oh, again, I'm not alone.
You're not alone. Yeah. And so like we get done doing these speaking things and there's always at least one person that will come up in tears like, hey, and they get to talk about it, man.
Yeah.
And I remember we got done. We were in Virginia speaking to this juvenile detention center, and so we're done. And like the principal of this detention center is walking us out, and he's nice. He's complimenting us, like, "Wow, good job." And you can tell like he's emotional, like he's been crying, or like his eyes are watery, and he looks at me. He's like, "I don't know how you did that. My father died 9 years ago, and I can't do that." And I looked at him and I said, it's because you never talk about it.
Yeah.
I talk about it every day. And he looked at me and I asked him, like, when's the last time you talked about it? And he didn't even know.
Yeah.
He never talks about it. And I do think you're right. I think a scary part of being vulnerable is this just going to isolate me? Am I going to sound like a psycho? And yeah, is it going to back? So like, I guess my question to you is like, you're in therapy. How do you help people like get over that fear and open up and talk?
I mean, a big part of therapy, and therapists is worth their salt, is going to be able to model that for you. I mean, that's why, you talk about how I shared, it's called, in the world of therapy, there's all these special terms, but it's called self-disclosure. And most therapists do a decent amount of self-exposure. I probably tend to be on the little higher end of self-disclosure stuff because I think it's valuable for the other person to kind of see me as a human so that they can trust me.
I think that's what you did for me.
Yeah.
Because I saw therapist after therapist, and it was clipboard, and it was the same questions. And then I meet Matt, and we're in your house. You're in regular clothes, and you're just a person, dude. You're opening up to me. It didn't feel like therapy. It felt like we were buddies, like at a bar, just talking about our shit almost.
Which is, I think, there's so much rigidity to the therapeutic process that is unnecessary. And I'm very fortunate because I had some incredible mentors that were able to kind of strip away some of that stuff and really get in my face, because I kind of had a talent for it. And just be like, you need to stop overthinking. That's my number one problem is I think way too much. And just go with your gut. Just trust that the thing you're going to say next is going to be the thing that helps this person. And if your heart's in the right place, it will. And that's so true. And I train dozens of therapists. I've worked with so many different therapists. And I say that over and over and over. And there's this point where, with a lot of clinicians, where it clicks. And then they go, oh, you mean I don't have to just follow the book? No, trust that you know what the book says and apply it in this particular situation. Most importantly, model vulnerability for this person, because nobody is going to get vulnerable with you unless you're willing to be vulnerable with them first.
So do you think, what's like the number one most important quality to make a good therapist, do you think? And that might be a really tough question, but like in basketball, you have all these things: dribbling, shooting, passing, defense, all this stuff. In my opinion, like the most important thing is shooting. Like you gotta be able to shoot the rock if you're gonna make it. Like, okay, therapist, what is it? Or is it nothing? It just depends on a lot of different things.
Yeah, there's a couple different things, but I think the foundation for a good therapist would be this therapeutic alliance thing that we're talking about. That's
developing that trust.
Developing the trust. And really what it comes down to is, like, when you look at the human needs, like the most basic of all human needs is the need for safety. And so a good therapist needs to create safety the entire environment that you're
ever
entering
seen,
into should
Matt,
be safe.
Sorry,
No, you're good.
I got like a movie addiction problem, but have you ever seen the movie Old School?
Oh, how many times have I seen
Will
it?
Ferrell's like,
That's
I
the
thought we were in the nest with the birds. I thought
trust tree.
maybe she's wearing a type of panties I don't even know about. Like, maybe it's just like, what? And the therapist is like, what?
are you talking
I
about?
thought we were in the nest with the bird. Like, I thought we were.
Trust tree. Yeah, dude, I love that spot. That's
But okay, what's like what's your number one goal with a client? Like, what do you need them to do, or what are you trying to, before we get into the hero's journey, I want to ask you that question. Like, whether it's me or whoever, what do you want for them? What do you need for them to do?
Because you're, in my mind, if he gets all the way better, he stops going to therapy, and you don't get the money from him or any clients. Like,
For sure.
is the end goal to stop? And maybe
Yes.
the end goal isn't to stop forever.
Don't worry, no one ever gets better. So you don't run. Yeah, it's gonna be fine. Real quick.
That's great.
Before you answer that
No,
question,
that's great.
Sam just reminded me of a funny story. So my dad, he was a therapist, social worker.
Yeah.
And he worked for like a girls' home, boys' home type thing. And if these teenagers, before they got put into the real world, they got to live like at our house, kind of like a halfway house type thing. So they'd come home with my dad and they'd live with us, the whole thing. And we had this one girl live with us that we got really close to, basically like part of the family now. But she suffered from an eating disorder, anorexia, I think. And she graduated my dad's program. So she graduated. She's about to re-enter the world. And I was a little kid, like 9, 10. And I won't forget it, though. But I asked my dad, her name was Dale, by the way. So I asked my dad, I'm like, so Dale, like, she's good now. She graduated. Like, she's good. And my dad's like, oh, no. No, she's not good. She's going to struggle with that the rest of her life. And I remember, like, I was like, wait, what? Like, because in my mind, like, she graduated, she's good. Like, no more eating disorder, like, no more body dysphoria. Like, she's good. And he's like, no, she's screwed. Like, she's going to be struggling with that one till but like, anyway, that just reminded me of that funny story.
Well, okay. I'm going to piggyback off this. What do I want? What should any clinician want for their client, for the person coming to them? Essentially, it's to change how they see themselves. When I train therapists, I say, okay, you have the most difficult job in the world. Welcome to the most difficult sales job in the world. You're trying to sell a person themselves. That's your job. And that's the truth.
And let's use the eating disorder as an example again, because this is a good one.
It's literally
literally, dude. Like, she's skin and bones. Literally looks at herself in the mirror. I'm overweight. Like, good luck changing that perspective, dude. Like, you're like, when you say it might be the toughest sell job, I don't know, that might be true.
I really think it is. I think it's just a good kind of analogous way to explain what the therapist is trying to do. But speaking of eating disorders, that's literally like the most difficult mental health issue to overcome. That's pretty widely agreed upon. There are others that are pretty difficult, but usually it comes with a multitude of other things. But if you think about a person with an eating disorder, they have an extreme difficulty controlling their inner world, their emotional world. So now they control their outer world through food, and they control what they put into their mouth, whether they do or don't. And that becomes this end-all, be-all element of obsession, where you're just constantly ruminating, thinking about what's going in my face. Like, what am I going to put in today? What am I not going to put in? What am I going to control?
What is something that you can control?
Right. And so that stems from some sort of belief system within that person, right? That person believes that they are not good enough, or they are worthless, or it's all their fault, or they can't trust, or it's not safe, right? There's actually these 5 core themes of trauma, we call them. And this is from a treatment model called cognitive processing therapy. So it's safety, trust, power and control, esteem, and intimacy. And there's another one that I like to throw in there too called responsibility. It's from a different model. But those 6, safety, trust, power and control, esteem, intimacy, and responsibility, show up time and time again because that's the thing that's violated in a trauma. So if I'm abused, my safety's been violated. Probably the person who's abusing me was someone I was supposed to trust. Boom. I was powerless. I had no control in that moment, right? My esteem now, do I believe that somehow I'm worthless because this thing happened? And because my trust has been violated, I now can't allow people to connect with me. I can't allow for intimacy. And most people, responsibility, end up believing that they have culpability in that process, that it's somehow their fault. And working through those 5, 6 things becomes the goal. You kind of find the core one, right? I believe that I'm worthless. It's my core negative self-belief. And so I work then on self-worth, self-value. And we do that by hopefully, going through different traumatic events and finding like the big ones that happen. There's a couple different processes that you can do to kind of walk back and find the biggest traumatic event of a person's life. And that's typically the one we'll focus on for the longest period of time. And I've worked for, many, many, many years now with families who've lost children, which typically that's one of the biggest things that's ever happened to them. I worked for many, many years with women with sexual abuse, men with sexual abuse, child abuse. And those tend to be extremely difficult things to work through, but the self-belief, the belief system that the person adopts in order to survive that situation was at the time adaptive, meaning that it got me out of that situation somewhat intact. So that's why the responsibility one is a big one, right? Most people, when it comes to their traumatic event, end up believing that they were somehow culpable, that it's their responsibility. It's their fault that this bad thing happened. So, trigger warning for people out there. I worked with a girl for a long time, and she was raped when she was 3 years old. And she remembers it vividly, her earliest memory. And the reason she believed that she got raped was because she asked her babysitter to take off her diaper. And that's her memory. And she believed it was her fault. So what we did for years, I'm not joking, years, is we worked on looking at how everything in her life, all of the bad things that have happened to her are somehow her fault. But what's the reality? Like, why do bad things happen to good people? Because that's the nature of life. That's just how this goes. 3-year-olds get abused. Really messed up. It should not be the case. And yet here we are in this existence, this thing called life that we're trying to figure out how to get through. And if I believe that I have more control than I really do, that's problematic in a big, big, big way. Because really, what can we actually control?
Yeah.
Like nothing. Like virtually nothing. And learning to accept that changes how I see myself in relation to the world. And now I look at what I can control, and I begin to believe that I am powerful enough to change the things that I can control. But if I'm victim, right, the victim mentality is, well, I'm so powerless that I can't change anything in my life, so I have to blame everything outside of me. And by blaming everything outside of me, I get an excuse to keep doing the thing that I'm doing. That actually, in some sense, is adaptive and protective. Limiting my happiness, but it's protecting me from the actual, real, deep pain that is in existence because of the thing that happened to me. So what you're doing when you talk about this thing over and over and over, right, is we're conditioning ourselves to the pain associated with that trauma.
You said, I don't even know where to go from there because there was like so many things you said that, but I do want to mention how, because I don't know if I ever felt like it was my fault, but Matt, dude, like, you even know me, you know my shit, like PTSD, panic attacks, anxiety, grief, depression, I got all that, but dude, survivor's guilt kicks all their asses, man. That thing's a real son of a bitch. And so I don't feel like it was my fault, but I just feel so bad that I wasn't with them. And the terror that they had in their last moments and I wasn't there, like for Frankie and for Reagan's especially, that it just eats me up. And so I don't know if I struggle so much with, and let me say this too, this is kind of totally like not really relatable at all, but I just want to say it before I forget it. The guilt I had with race, you know, when I was picking up that phone call, wishing it was, yeah, that guilt is like, almost gone.
Wow.
Like I should probably stop saying it when I do my public speaking, honestly, because or change the verbiage to I used to feel guilt.
Feel it.
But honestly,
I've now moved through this thing I used to feel.
And listen, I think that video, I was doing a public speaking thing for that Jimmy Rex guy, and then he blasted it, and I got a bunch of views. So I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but, and what I mean by that is, because when I talk about my pain and it's shared, it's like, hey, Matt, take a little pain. Sam, like, take some of this pain. Like, it kind of gets like, it's like the we versus me. Like, here, like, help me hold this pain, guys. So I don't know if, like, millions of people seeing that video clip kind of helped me, but for whatever reason, Matt, like, the more I've talked about that guilt I had with my brother is smaller, and smaller. Let's say I stop talking about it. Let's say I stop talking about it. Like, hey, it's over now. I'm going to stop talking about it in my public speaking. Would it come back?
Yeah, I don't know.
Or is it gone?
Yeah, I don't know. You should stop talking about it and see what happens.
But I think the whole...
You want to be the personal experiment? Report back to us on how that works? I have a theory that it won't work very well, but I don't know.
But there's something to it, dude. Like,
there's tons to it.
I talk about the pain over and over again, and I can see it on other people's faces, dude.
But the thing you're doing, though, like, yeah, you're talking about it and you're, like, getting it out, sure. But what's really happening, like, cognitively and more importantly, like, spiritually, like, that's a big part of the way that I do therapy stuff is I talk about, like, the soul, right? And I can't remember the exact word, but, like, in the East, they don't have a word for trauma. They just call it soul wound, which is pretty freaking powerful, right?
I think that was pretty cool.
Yeah, right? And
Soul
so I have this wound to my soul. Well, how do you heal a wound? Well, you have to pay attention to it. You have to treat it. You have to tend to it. You have to scrub it out sometimes because it's getting infected, and you have to allow the wound to heal by protecting it. But really what we do when we talk about something over and over and over is we're reassigning the meaning that was once attached to it, the belief that was there. And those beliefs usually come in those categories: safety, trust, power, control, esteem, intimacy, responsibility. And if I believe at one point in time that, you know, I am a bad father because I didn't keep my children safe, that's going to be an esteem one, right?
That's going to be a what one?
Esteem, worthwhile, worthlessness, worthiness, right? Mm-hmm. And I believe that I'm a bad father now, but then I talk about, or maybe a bad brother in that particular instance,
Sure.
right?
Well, I think I'm a bad father too. We pick your poison, Matt.
Poison. Well, for sure,
What one do you
right?
want to do today?
Right. Well, and that's why like we talked about last time, the parts stuff. It's
Yeah.
awesome. You can say a part of me believes.
And don't forget your bad husband as well.
I have bad husband as well. Yeah, thanks, Sam.
Yeah, bad friend. Just
No, I didn't have any. I didn't have any friends in the car. I'm a good friend. There's some dark humor for you, man.
I love it,
There
man.
you
Oh,
go.
bring on the dark humor. Yeah, I'm a piece of shit too.
Yeah.
Let's go. Yeah, you want to hear how my failure yesterday? Just kidding. It happened this morning. But what we're doing when we talk about stuff is we're literally realigning the way that our brain functions. Like neurologically, we're changing where in the brain this event is being processed by talking about it. Because giving it language, especially repeat language, you're actually moving the activity of the brain and where it's centralized in relation to that particular event.
Damn.
You're changing it from your midbrain, primitive brain activity, which is going to see it through a lens of like black and white, very, very, very dichotomous. And then you're moving it up to the prefrontal cortex part of your brain where you can assign it meaning and it can have a relation to you spiritually. And you can change the way that you see the event from this thing that happened to you that you're suffering from and move it into this idea of a thing that happened for you that's now part of your journey through life. And this is the concept of post-traumatic growth. And what post-traumatic growth is this theory, basically, that you can change. So basically, I have stuff inside of me that I have control over or don't have control over, and I have stuff outside of me that I have control over and don't have control over. Most of the stuff outside of me, I have no control over. Most of the stuff inside of me, I have a little bit of control over, if not a lot. Right? But automatic thinking patterns, I don't have control over necessarily because they're automatic. But my awareness of those automatic thinking patterns, I have a lot of control over. So now what do I have to focus on? The awareness of the thinking pattern. So I notice that this thinking pattern of I'm a bad father or I'm a bad kid or I'm a bad person shows up all the time. Well, that's interesting. Well, in what area do I believe that that's not true? Well, what is the event that makes me believe that I am a bad brother?
Car accident in my family.
So now let's talk about it. Well, let's really process it. Really, what happened in that instance? Why do you believe you're such a bad brother?
Because I thought I wanted him to die.
Is that really true? You wanted
No.
your brother to die.
No.
So notice that hold on. The automatic thinking first was, I wanted him to die. And then I ask one simple question, is that really what you think? And immediately we move brain activity, prefrontal, and you go, well, no, that's not actually what I wanted.
It's not what I wanted at all, but
No.
he told me one survivor. So then my brain, the automatic thing, my brain starts flipping through him. Like, Mace, who is it going to be? I'm like, well, I don't want it to be Race, and I don't want it to be Ryder. I need Courtney or a kid. Like,
So what's really interesting about this is just like, okay.
and here, hold on. And this is interesting too, Matt. It goes back to the parts thing. Because there's a part of me, Matt, that knows that doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah, so
there's
true.
a part of me that knows it. Like, Mace, like, but then there's another part that's like, wow, you are something else, dude. You're a real piece of shit.
Yeah, that's the shadow, man. There's the Jungian stuff that comes with the hero's journey, right? We all have this.
What's the hero's journey? What is this?
So, hero's journey. I brought some reading materials. Here you go, friends. Who wants to see some reading materials?
Yeah, I want it.
I got you.
I'm a visual guy.
I figured. Show you here. Unprofessional. I have a pen in my mouth. Sorry
You
about
want-
that. So, go to the back one. Go to the blue one.
This one?
Blue, other side.
I'm gonna show it for the camera though.
Yeah, that one. Yep. And you can post this. I'll give you a shot of it or
All right.
whatever. And then there's kind of two sides to this. So there's like the really detailed side on one side that shows all the 17 stages, but this is the other side that's a little more simple. It's just 7 stages. And the idea is this: every human being, every great movie plot has just a pattern that all of them follow, right? Star Wars is a great example. Harry Potter, Puss in Boots, hero's journey, right? All of these things have this very simple linear pattern that we follow throughout our entire lives. And the pattern is basically call to adventure, supernatural aid, cross a threshold, get some help from a helper, go into the abyss, death and rebirth, experience a transformation. You have to atone for it somehow, and then you have a return and you bring back all this cool stuff to your friends. So I'll break it down. Star Wars. Luke lives on Tatooine.
Can we pick like not such a dorky?
Nope.
I'm just
Star Wars is great.
Do you like Star Wars,
Yes.
Sam? Sam's gonna be
Big
right with me.
fan,
Okay,
yeah.
me and Sam are on the same page. This guy over here, do you want to talk about Puss in Boots? Would you rather do that?
no, go for it.
Oh,
Man.
okay, you sure we could do Puss in
No.
Boots?
Entertained you are.
But so Luke's on Tatooine, right? Staring off at the two suns. All of a sudden, what happens? You guys remember the story of Luke Skywalker?
He's one of his gets blown up, right?
Yeah, his aunt and uncle die. He meets Ben, right? Old Ben, who's Obi-Wan Kenobi. And Obi-Wan says, come with me. No, I can't come with you, Obi-Wan. Goes home, aunt and uncle are dead.
You know what? I think I'm going to go with you.
Yep, there's your supernatural aid. Aunt and uncle dead. He has to cross this threshold.
Or kind of like Batman loses his parents.
Batman.
All right.
Dude, it's everywhere.
No, you're right. Keep
It's
going. Sorry.
all over the
I'm
place.
sorry I said it. Keep going.
You're fine. No, it's all over the place. You can see Batman Begins is a great one too, right? Like, what's the origin story of Batman? Like, why? How does Bruce Wayne become Batman?
Or Peter Parker.
Peter
or,
Parker.
Yeah.
Dude, it's
all right. I'm with you.
everywhere,
I'm with
right?
Kips. Keep going.
Yeah. So then Luke crosses this threshold, and he begins his transformation. Well, what is he going to become? He's going to become a Jedi. Right? And so how's he got to become a Jedi? Well, he gets his father's lightsaber. Oh, that's so freaking cool. I got my father's lightsaber. I'm going to learn how to use it. And then all of a sudden, right, he goes down in to this. He has this helper, this mentor, right, Obi-Wan. And then he goes into this
Or Alfred for Batman.
Alfred for Batman, exactly. And then you go into the abyss, and this is this death and rebirth thing that has to happen, right? So you could look at multiple parts of the Star Wars mythos, right? You could look at when he goes in and he has to meet Yoda, and he goes into the cave and he comes back out. Like, it's all over the place. There's all these different stories. Lord of the Rings is the same thing. You have a mentor. Frodo has to go all the way. Like, it's everywhere. And it's our story too, because there's this point in our lives where we're met with something that feels almost insurmountable. And in that moment of trauma, right, you lose your family. What do you do? This is the human thing. What are you going to do? And it's an opportunity. So I told you. And I wasn't full of shit that day. I'm not lying to you.
No, I just hated the word.
Of course we did.
Everybody
hates that.
I always related opportunity to good, like something good.
But
and this is not good, Matt.
But I would say not good nor bad.
It's indifferent.
It is.
Yeah, you're right.
And what is the meaning you are going to assign to it? What are you going to do with this death that you've experienced? Quite literally.
See, and that's okay. And I'm glad you said that, because that's the whole 1090 thing is
100%.
it's up to you, man.
That's
like my family.
Yes.
My family could die in vain, and it doesn't mean anything. I could do that if I lay in bed and just cry and don't do anything. That's what it would be.
Yep. And then you accept your new challenge, and then you hit your transformation. And what does Luke do, right? The end of Empire Strikes Back, Luke faces his father, right? That he finds out it's his father's this ultra thing. He's had all these different deaths and transformations, and finally, the end of the best of all the Star Wars movies, Luke's standing there, and he's looking out, and the movie ends, and you know there's going to be more, but it's right here. It's in this moment of transformation. And then there's this brief period, and comes back, and it's called The Return of the Jedi. Which is literally, there's actually 3 parts. If you flip it over, you can kind of see there's separation, initiation, and return. And that's kind of how it all works. I separate from my sense of self. I have this initiation into a new version of myself. And then I return to myself. I find a better version of me. And I go through this death and rebirth thing. And it's just, this comes from Jungian psychology. This comes from Christianity. This comes from Buddhism. This comes from Hinduism, Taoism. The cool thing about Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey, which is what this is, the guy who created it, Joseph Campbell, in the 80s, 70s and 80s, 60s, 70s and 80s, all he did was study religiosity, faith practices, all over the world, from the Aboriginal, right, just like these small tribes in Africa, up to the major religions of Christianity. And what he did is he found the overlap. And he wrote this book called The Hero of 1,000 Faces. And it is unfreaking believable. Top 5 books I've ever read, changed my life like you could not believe. Because what I came to find, right, is he has a couple of quotes that I think are just fantastic.
Let's hear some.
What he talks about, okay, and Seneca, we're going to go Stoic for just a
Hello,
second.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, right. Seneca has a quote that really illustrates well this hero's journeys thing, right? Fate leads the willing and drags along the reluctant. It's a thinker.
Say it again.
Fate leads the willing and drags along the reluctant. Go. Go. Love it.
We both just did the deep breath about to talk. Okay, read it one more time, because I forgot what I was going to say.
Fate leads the willing and drags along the reluctant.
So that's acceptance, right?
100%. That's the acceptance.
And this is what Stoicism has taught me, is you got to live one with nature. You got to live in accordance with nature, meaning you have to accept your fate.
And what is nature? death and rebirth on repeat over and over and over.
Right. And I think, yeah, and I think religion does the same thing. They just call it different things, but they're essentially saying, like, give it to God or all faith. They're basically saying the same thing. Like, hey, this is kind of out of my hands. I accept God's will. Meaning whatever. We're all doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the Joseph Campbell guy realizes. I'm going to all these religions. They're all saying the same damn thing, basically.
They really
call it different things, but we're all playing the same game.
We're all playing the same game.
And it starts with acceptance, I think. And I think that's what Seneca's saying in that quote.
Well, and what Campbell teaches, he has this phrase he says all the time. It's called follow your bliss, which I think is a cool phrase. And to kind of elaborate what that means, right? He calls bliss like this thing that he noticed in every faith practice there is, that bliss is like this beautiful thing that brings fulfillment and meaning and purpose to your life, that is not just something that you stumble upon. Like, you're not just going to get bliss from a freaking roller coaster ride at Lagoon. Sounds great. Fun times. Let's go to Disneyland.
Yeah, you can at Lagoon. Maybe not Disneyland, but you could at Lagoon.
But that moment is so fleeting, right? I can't just spend my entire life at amusement parks. I guess I could, but that doesn't sound very blissful.
But that goes that are you going to, like, this is, you got to find purpose more.
You have to find meaning.
Yeah.
What, right? Like,
can
I say the F word on here?
Yeah, dude.
What's the fucking point to your life? And this is what I do as a therapist. And this is what I teach therapists to do, is you have to look your person, this person who's trusted you with their life. Like, therapy is so strange because you get this person who sits in front of you as a therapist, and they're so desperate for help that they've bypassed their friends, their family, their mentors, everything they've known. And they've come to you and said, just tell me what to do, man. I have no idea. Here's a couple $100. Please, please, I'll do it. And it's so weird to be that guy and to have all this trust and have to kind of maintain that trust.
Because, but in the back of your mind, you're like, dude, this is your hero's journey, though. Like, what
You're
do you
on it,
like?
bro.
What do you want?
And
what are you gonna do, though?
That's exactly 1090, right?
Yeah.
You have to freaking pick yourself up. You have to figure out what the hell you're doing here and why you're doing it. And 100 freaking % of the time, that is about some sort of relationship. 100% of the time. A daughter, a mother, a brother, a sister, a friend, someone who's lost, someone who you need to find, someone somewhere. And again, the thing that we are all combating is loneliness. We just want to connect. We just want to be with each other. And what this hero's journey is, the whole point of it, and you go through this abyss, you go through this transformation, you then have to pay penance. It's called an atonement thing, right? Ironic, they call it atonement, right? But you have to pay penance for the mistakes that you've made. And you have to learn again before you get to go back into the real world. And the reason you've done all this stuff is because you want to share it with the people you love. The whole point is to give it to everybody else. So you're going through this whole difficult, arduous, painful process. Why? For us, for human beings in general, not just for you, not for your little family, but to share with humanity as a whole. And that gives you ultra meaning and ultra purpose. And if you can tap into that, if you can realize that, like, even though your life might be really difficult right now, even though you might be going through the hardest thing you've ever been through, or maybe it's the second or third hardest thing, whatever, the reality of your situation is that thing is happening for you, not to you, for you, so that you can learn something, so that you can grow, so that you can get better, and then tell somebody, teach it, share it, own it, love it, and make this place better. This is the problem with humanity today. We're terrified. We don't care enough about our society to do anything anymore because we're scared that we'll be rejected for trying. And that's why I admire the hell out of you two guys, because you just freaking decided to, like, screw it. I'll start a podcast. I'm going to start talking about my family, my trials, my life, what I've been going through. And if people want to listen, great. And look how many people wanted to listen. Because people are starving for hope. It's so dark.
But our message really isn't full of hope.
But it is.
The joke on the 1090 podcast is, if you're on our podcast, your life sucks, probably. People are like, you don't want to be on our podcast.
Yeah, I think that just makes me feel not alone, right? Like, my life sucks.
Matt, that's the whole point
It's
of what
hard.
I'm saying. That's the whole point of why I said that was
Yeah.
we're just being honest about our pain, and it is relating to a lot of people because we're all hurting, man. And that's something, and this might show everyone how good I had it before the accident, but I had no idea that was the world we lived in. I just didn't. I just didn't get it at all.
And the big question is, okay, why continue hurting?
Well, I think there's lots of different layers to that question. I think for me, part of me, not all of me, but part of me wants to always keep hurting because that's where the love and the joy, that's where my family is. When I think about them and the pain, that's also where the good memories are, and the laughter and the love and the joy is too. So, and that's one thing I've learned, Matt, was when I ran from my problems, I was just running from the love and the good parts too. And the pain was still there. The pain was still there, but I didn't get any of the good shit that the trauma gives you. I was running away from all the good shit. So I was doubled, like I made it way
Resistance.
worse. Yeah.
Resistance. That's loneliness and resistance. They're such enemies because if I'm resisting this pain, I like to think of pain as like actual an energetic thing, like really a thing that, like if you held pain in your hand and it was like as big as like a little, like a ball or something, and then you put a bunch of energy into this pain, what is going to happen to this energy ball that you have?
Yeah.
It's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So the more I resist, the more pain I feel. So instead, what do I have to do? I have to let go. I've got to stop resisting. I got to let the pain exist. I got to examine it. Stop forcing it.
I think it goes back to that Seneca quote too.
Totally. Totally.
Let's wrap this up. Tie it all together for us. Like, how do you want to end this thing? Another quote, or
So
I just want to end it because Matt or Sam's got to go to his day job.
yeah, you got work to do, man.
Yeah.
You got to go find your why, live your life,
Right.
do what you're
Yeah.
doing. Campbell quote. My favorite thing that he teaches eternity is now. That there's no such thing as something beyond this that is going to be better than this. He writes, heaven is not the place you get to experience eternity. You are where you are. You never can leave where you are. And the idea that you were born or that you may die is false because your existence is always now. Eternity is now. And that's where bliss always is in the now. So this idea that it's going to get better, false. This idea that it was better, false. There's no such thing as was or will be. There is only is. And in this moment, what is going to bring you that bliss? If you can tap into that, man, life is good. It's a beautiful, wonderful, amazing thing no matter what you've been through, because you realize that this is it. This is all you'll ever have, is this moment. And that's a major, major core teaching of the Campbellites. And Hero of a Thousand Faces, can't recommend it enough.
Yeah, I want to.
It's really cool. It's long. It's deep. It's very academic, but it's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. Book of a Thousand. What is it?
Hero of a Thousand Faces.
Hero of a Thousand Faces. Sam, do you read it all? Mm-hmm. Like books?
I read Mike Lupica.
I read a lot of Mike Lupica. Mike Lupica, sports writer for the Daily News. Matt, thanks for coming on. Let me ask you a real quick question, though. You think, is there a difference between like being a cheap ass and being like frugal?
I think there is. Yeah.
So
I think there is.
Sam and I were debating something.
Okay.
Because Sam is extremely cheap. Well, Sam, I don't want to put.
Do
you want to tell the story?
I like the wording "careful with money."
No.
I'm extremely careful.
Let's talk about the ranch dressing. Do you want to? And listen, I don't want to put words in your mouth and make it sound like it's not. So, do you want to tell the story of the ranch dressing? Yeah. And this is with Skittles. This is with small bags of chips. It's not just ranch, Matt. listen to this story.
Yeah, if I go to the store and I purchase an item, I'm not satisfied with the item, I return the item. I think that's a normal. It says right there on the back, 100% satisfaction guaranteed or full refund. I want my refund. I was not satisfied. This did not taste good. It didn't taste how it was supposed to taste. These jelly beans were hard. They're supposed to be soft. I'm taking the jelly beans back.
He will eat half the bag of Skittles.
I wouldn't say half. You got to eat enough to know if it's a good bag or a bad bag.
Whatever.
But
one Skittle. It doesn't matter. Let's say he's in his house. He opens a bag of Skittles. He eats a Skittle. Then he takes the bag of Skittles, gets dressed, walks to his car, drives back to the grocery store, returns the Skittles for $1.19 or whatever it is.
it's the principle.
That's probably the principle. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
This morning, I returned a 97-cent notebook. I didn't need the notebook.
why'd you buy it?
I bought too many notebooks.
That's on you. That's not like the point is no one's returning 97 cents. You take the loss.
What do I need with 5 notebooks? No reason to just throw it away when I get my $1 back. Go get a Coke at McDonald's.
Hey,
You're a therapist. Like he has a problem, right? Like this
No,
is not
actually,
normal. This is not normal. Okay,
hold on. I'm envious, man.
No,
I
you're
wish I
not.
cared that much about freaking money.
Yes.
No.
Yeah, people are going to come back and they're going to start messaging us like, I'm so glad I'm not alone in this. I return ranch as well.
Probably.
Like, dude,
a bag of Skittles and
penny
ranch
pinching over here.
dressing?
I'm going.
Man,
There's
I don't
no
know.
way.
Yeah, I don't think I would ever
Listen,
do that.
Isn't correct me if I'm wrong, but in order for something to be classified, like DSM-5, like classified, doesn't it have to like it has to like ruin your life day to day, basically, right? Isn't this like
I wouldn't say
it's
it ruined
ruining
it,
his
but-
life?
So let me ask you
Is
this.
it ruining your
But
life?
I would-
Instead of
say
spending
it
time with
plays.
wife and kids, you're gonna go.
See, no, I
return a
often,
bag
I
of
often they
Skittles?
come with me. I'll bring them with me. Get in. We're heading to the store. Okay,
Oh
so let
my-
me ask you this because I think there's a difference between what I'm doing. You're so far the opposite end. We go out to eat. You order a steak, and they bring you a chicken. You won't even say anything. You'll just eat the chicken. That's
Okay.
not what you ordered. That's not what you wanted. That's not what you
That's
paid
my
for.
wife, dude. She won't send stuff back. She actually has gotten better. One of our very first dates, we got this dessert. It was not good, and I was like, I'm sending it back. And she looks at me, she's like, no, please don't. Please don't, please don't. I was like, it's their freaking job. I'm sending it back. It's fine. We send it back.
No.
Got the money back. Didn't get dessert. I don't have a problem with that.
Right.
I don't
No,
have to
you
do that
see-
for 97 cents
Listen,
freaking Skittles.
I'm
but
on
hey, I
the I'm
get
on the
principle.
hero's journey. I practice acceptance. I accept the plate of food and I make the most of it and I eat that thing.
Yeah.
All right, Matt, you're the man, dude.
I like it. Thank you guys for having me.
yeah,
on. This was a
thank you.
blast.
Yeah.
And yeah, awesome. Great episode. Thanks so much. And everyone out there, remember that life is 10% what happens to you and 90% what you're going to do about it.